FNL Lacrosse presented by the Sports Stop of New Hampshire. It's the Swag Bags segment. Sports Stop of New Hampshire, your locally owned and operated one-stop shop for everything lacrosse. Sports Stop of NH carries all brands of lacrosse equipment for both boys and girls. Real easy to get to. They're partnered with one of the country's largest .com retailers, so if they don't have it, they can get it. Whether it's beginner packages, team sales, or a huge selection of restringing supplies, Sports Stop of New Hampshire knows your team. 273 South River Road in Bedford, 603-606-1921, the number, or email lacrosse@sportstopnh.com. And as usual, joining us from Inside Lacrosse Magazine is Kyle Devitte, who is fresh out of the fire, so to speak, and now into the frying pan with us on FNL Lacrosse. You, of course, were down in the city of Baltimore the last couple of days, really in the mix of the riots. What was that like to not only be down there, but to have your magazine offices be based in Baltimore? Got to be a little surreal.
Yeah, it was really, I'll be honest, it was pretty scary.
Yeah.
The Friday night before the first protest, I actually went to see the Red Sox defeat the Orioles down the road, and I was feeling pretty good. And then Saturday came. I was in the office doing live scores, and, kind of the word got out that something was going to happen. There was going to be a protest. Got in my car, tried to get out, got stuck in traffic, used some driving skills that I acquired in my time in Massachusetts, and got around it, thankfully, but hit the tail end of the protesters, had one or two people pound on my hood of the car.
Wow.
That was pretty scary, but, I got out of that, and then, the next day was the real kind of scary part. And, I'll just tell a story real quick to set the scene. We were working on some video stuff in the IL offices. I was finishing up some touches on my column that went up for the MLL this week. And our security guy in our office came up the stairs and said, all right, you guys need to get out or you can hunker down with me.
Mm.
And
wow.
The other guy, the video guy and I, his name is Zach Babo, looked at each other, and we grabbed all our stuff, and we, I ran to the parking garage, and it's funny because the riots didn't necessarily touch the inner harbor where the offices are, but there was still people outside just walking around like nothing was happening at that point, and that was around 5:00, and thankfully I got out, and we, took a circuitous route around the city to get around any of the activity, made it back to D.C. to my friend's place, and had a couple people that knew I was down there, call and text and be like, you okay? I'm like, yeah, I got out. And then I fired up Twitter and CNN and started looking at photos and realizing, where those places are and seeing the destruction. I feel very lucky to have gotten out of there. And I feel awful for the city of Baltimore. It's kind of my adopted second home. And, it's just a shame that all this stuff happened.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that the worst is behind us and that this maybe in the rearview mirror by the time, Labor Day rolls around, obviously, with the big showcase down there for the NCAA. We are speaking again with our guest, the insider from Inside Lacrosse Magazine. That's Kyle Devitte, New Hampshire native, and, of course, working at least some of his days down there in Baltimore at the corporate offices. All right, let's take a look at the equipment here. We're going to focus in on helmets. Seems to be again in the news when you take a look. You wanted to highlight some of the major differences between, let's say, a brand new helmet fresh off the shelf versus one that's been broken in a little bit, maybe a year or so old. What are some of those glaring differences that potential purchasers should know about?
I was actually going to talk about heads, but
heads. Excuse me.
Yeah, sorry. It's perfectly fine. Totally acceptable given the helmet craze that has gone on.
Right.
The certification and recertification and decertification of all these helmets. This company, Warrior, that I think a lot of people are familiar with, they've been, at the forefront of the industry for a long time, came out with a new, I guess it's an ad campaign, but it's also kind of an educational piece about, the differences between a new head and a head that's gone through a year of, or a season of play. And they call it fresh versus dead. And one of the things they did was they had this mocap lab, And Paul Rabel is a Warrior signed athlete. So what they did was they put all this mocap technology on him. They filmed him, shooting with a brand new head, brand new mesh, and then filmed him shooting with, the same head, but that head has gone through a season of regular play, strung exactly the same. And the results of that test were the first head was far more accurate and hit a corner target 4 out of 5 times. The dead head with the exact same stringing, the older head, hit the target just once, and the shots were, the spread was very different. And I think, part of this goes back to measuring flex points and where the ball releases, and you can string your head different ways to have your head perform different ways. But in the end, heads are made of plastic or even nylon polymer is actually a better description for the material, and that degrades over time. Each head has that flex point that can be measured by how far back the top of the head of the scoop kind of bends back when you're shooting or passing, and new heads have less of a drop or dip in that area because the integrity of the plastic is not compromised yet. A head that's used for an entire season will have less integrity as the plastic undergoes a beating from all angles. Like, you're not just using your head to shoot and pass. You're checking, you're picking up ground balls, you're fixing it after a face-off, and kids that have played for a long time, or even new players, like, have you ever wondered why your head naturally pinches over time? And the reason that happens is because the plastic weakens. The more that you play with it, the integrity of the plastic, and it will go in farther, and the flex point will be higher, and eventually, your stick's going to be a little less accurate.
Again, Kyle Devitte, our guest of Inside Lacrosse Magazine. You're listening to FNL Lacrosse here on ESPN New Hampshire. So what I'm getting out of this, Kyle, is basically it's time for a new head every year, right?
Yeah, I mean, they make the heads to get a new head every year, and this is kind of the science showing that. It's not really. I mean, you could look at it as an ad campaign, but really, it's not like they're making up the information. The information is true.
Right.
And the analogy I use when I actually talk to the brand manager about this is, it's kind of like running shoes, right? So you have running shoes that you use for a month. You break them in, they feel great. You're getting the energy return from your runs. And now those same shoes, after 6 months of everyday activity, they still work. They're shoes. But you're not getting the benefit of their cushion anymore.
Yep.
And with lacrosse sticks, imagine the head itself as the shoe, and the stringing, after an extended period of time, is actually more like the shoelaces of a shoe. I mean, you can change them, make them fit tighter, the pocket tighter, but you're not changing the integrity of the shoe. You're just freshening it up temporarily. And I think that's actually a spot-on analysis by I mean, yeah, it's a brand, but it's something that really needs to be considered by players. If you put it on the ground and you kind of move it around and the head flexes all the way over and bends, it's time for a new head. I mean, that's just really what this technology, what this presentation is showing. And the thing is, it's a company that shows their work. They have this new ad campaign. You can find them on YouTube at Warrior Sports, and it'll be one of the first videos. It's called Fresh versus Dead. And you can just see the channel and kind of check out what they're saying, and it definitely checks out to the technology of the heads and speaks to the materials that we're using. Yes, they're advanced, but advanced plastics and nylons and polymers. Eventually, everything breaks down that's made out of that, right? So it's really just kind of a cool thing that I thought I would share with everybody this week. Yeah,
and absolutely, and as we know, plenty of heads, brand new heads available down at Sports Stop of New Hampshire on 273 South River Road in Bedford. Appreciate it as usual, Kyle. Let's have some safe travels on your end in the near future. Thanks again for jumping on.
Thanks a lot. Really appreciate you guys having me on.